we have an interesting speaker tonight because we don't have a photographer as our speaker. Maybe somebody that can help us with our composition. Patrick, would you like to introduce our speaker?
Hello. Okay. Hi. So this evening we have an artist, not a photographer, as Bill said, to help us with our composition. I figure that an artist actually has to pay very close attention. They do have a lot of time, perhaps, to make sure that they can get what they wish, but they only get one chance on a canvas or paper, whereas we get to go, you know, and we get one of those 452 pictures we just shot. So our guest speaker this evening is Jane is an award-winning artist out of the Georgetown area. She teaches adults in the Sun City area, and she's been doing this for, I don't know, a couple of years, 10, 20.
Half a dozen years.
Half a dozen years or more.
The teaching, yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over and stop being goofy and let Jane tell us about composition. She brought some other things, some artwork so we can discuss things. This is an open discussion, I believe. Yes. Okay, Jane,
Thank
it's
you.
yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Patrick, for inviting me. I was surprised when he called or emailed me and said, would you like to come and talk to our photography group? And I said, well, I'm not really a photographer, but, you know, I've been drawing and painting for quite a while now. And I thought, and I'm a teacher, so, okay, I'm open to it. So we talked a little bit about, you know, what are the challenges with photography, including composition. And I said, well, if I focus my presentation and discussion with you about composition only, and then maybe two subject areas like landscapes and what I call single subject, like a flower or a bird, it might be a good way to focus composition down, because composition, you can talk about, you know, portrait photography, you can talk about all kinds of things. So we're going to really just talk about sort of landscape work and also single subject today. But to help me like know a little bit about you, I would like to just learn how many people, you know, just raise your hands, are like somewhat new to photography, like 0 to 5 years, and this is kind of your creative outlet. How many people are in that camp that they're sort of beginning their journey? Okay. And how many people are more like 5 to 10 years, have been doing this a while and are a little bit more developed? Okay. And then more than that. Got a lot of those. Okay. So you can, all of you can help, because I'm going to be asking you to observe things in the images I present and share what you see back to me about composition. So let's see, what I have just in this first image, I tend to paint and work in local subjects often because they're very popular for people. I've painted other things from around the world, but they tend not to be what people favor and buy unless you're in that location. So this is an example of my work. I took several photographs at Allen's Boots in Austin, and my painting is below. And I'm going to talk more about it in the presentation, but you can see how I, you know, narrowed it down, focused, simplified the view, and changed quite a bit to really turn it into a painting and a more painterly view rather than this cramped level of shelves, you know, that you might see in Allen's Boots. So I'll be talking about that in one of the examples. So I've got, everybody have a handout, by the way? Everybody got one? No? Okay. There's a few more here. I'll pass them back. Thank you. There's stapled. Okay. Thank you. So what I hope to share today and to get you to talk is to know what the elements and principles of composition are from a visual art standpoint. That means visual art encompasses painting, photography, graphic design, and encompass sculpture. So I'm talking at that big level. what are those elements and principles of composition that help the artist to become better at their work and understand their work to refine it. And then there are two main goals. You know, you can boil your goals of composition to lots, but there's a couple goals I want to share with you, and I want you to always have those in mind when you're refining a work or taking lots of shots to settle on something and edit something that you might want to put in a show. So what are those goals of strong compositions? And then we're going to look, I have a lot of examples. We're going to look at strong and weak compositions in those two genres, landscapes and then single subject. And by that, I mean natural and man-made subjects. And what I brought in the presentation are, I sourced a bunch of photographs on the internet. So, and I try to put the source on there, and some are, you know, award-winning photos, and some of them are just amateur photographers that you find, you know, on Pixabay or Pexels. And then I have examples of my personal work and then also from art history. I'm somebody who, I'm certified to teach college level art history. I love it. It's a strong source of inspiration for me. And I encourage you, you'll see during your photographic journey, to look at famous photographers and famous artworks to get ideas for what you do, because they'll often give you more information about how to be good in your craft. So again, this is a redo, but so what is composition? What are the elements and principles of design? What are the two goals? We're going to get into two types, landscapes and single subject. And I want you to be open to talking and answering questions as we go. So this is the sort of the heavy duty page of composition. When you study art, you know, in your curriculum, you know, in undergraduate school or graduate school, and when you talk and write about art, you talk about these 7 elements of art. These are like what you would call building blocks. And any kind of art can be broken down into these simple things like line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color. And these seem kind of abstract, but I'm going to try to have you recognize in certain images when you see that line plays an important role, or that color is helping to bring out the emotion in the piece, or that value. I think photographers often look for contrast. Artists, we talk about value range. And the stronger your value range around your focal point, the more likely your focal point is going to be viewed as the focal point. So these are like little tiny pieces that you could analyze any artwork, any photography, and say, what's in it? What are the shapes in there? Like you may have, whereas you showed me your it was, I forget, with you showed me your picture from the mountain ranges.
City of Denver, no, Colorado Springs Park.
Yeah, Garden of the Gods. And so there was a repetition of 3 forms in that. And you use these building blocks to create these feelings and these impacts for people. So he showed me three mountain peaks in a row. So there was nice unity, but there's also this sort of sense of proportion change going on, because one of the mountains was big, the next one was smaller, and all that. So these building blocks help you get this kind of impact. You might get movement, you might get rhythm. I know this sounds a little theoretical, and we're going to get away from the theoretical, but anybody studying art will memorize these and sort of analyze works in these dimensions. So the key goals when you put components together are to get somebody to understand what's the meaning of your piece. The 2 key goals, do you have a certain meaning behind it or an intent? Is there a story you're trying to tell with your image? And then the second part is you want to engage the viewer's attention. You want them to spend a lot of time looking at something because it is so interesting and there are so many aspects to it. So this is not easy to do, but the more you understand what you're using and you're either creating some of these impacts, the better you're going to engage the viewer's attention. And if you don't put these components together, you're going to not grab the attention of people. They're going to just say, oh, nothing, you know, move on kind of thing. So this is, you know, like the definition page, and I want you to be having this in the back of your mind as we go through this. So I thought I would give you 2 examples right up front about strong compositions. And I want to know in each one, I'll be asking you questions about what is being used in each of these, okay? So on this left one, it's by a winner of the Natural Landscape Photographic Award, Gunther Reisner, okay? When you look at this and you look at these pieces, can anybody tell me what is attracting you to this? Is it some or more of these effects, if you will, principles? What do you notice? Do you notice color? Do you notice shape? Tell anybody. A hand up. So go ahead.
The curved lines.
The curved lines and the repetition maybe of them. Great. And what else? Anybody? Yes.
Rhythm.
Rhythm. Okay, excellent. So you're creating this nice flowy feeling. Okay, there's more emotion in this piece.
Complementary colors.
Complementary colors. Excellent. Because what are the 2 complementary colors in that one?
Yellow.
Yeah, very good. And complementary colors, those that are opposite each other on the color wheel, have the highest impact when seen together. That's why all the holidays use they use complementary colors, Christmas, red and green, Easter, yellow and violet. Okay, so it's because it has impact.
Oh.
Let's talk about this one on the right. This is by Alfred Stieglitz, who's a very famous photographer. And can you tell me, what do you think the story is here? Anybody, what message do you get?
Steerage sucks.
Yes, yes, why? Why?
It's crowded.
It's crowded.
Dark.
Yes, yes. And what's helping to create that sense of, you know, crowded, dark? What is he doing? What's
He's-
going on with any of these pieces that
He's got lines that are, you know, lines cordoning off people from other people.
oh,
And then we have light and dark, in this case, contrasting. yeah, a lot of
yes,
movement.
yes. You get lines helping you with movement. It may be helping separate
We got
people,
that here.
as people said. And I like this contrast. It took me a while to notice that the people on the bottom row here are mostly with white shrouds against the dark background, whereas the people up here are in dark silhouette against the light. Very clever, you know, so there's a lot of impact being created, a lot of different tools he's using to really make this it's a museum piece.
And there's kind of a skewed perspective that makes you kind of uneasy.
Yeah, how? Because of what?
Because the smokestack or whatever that is tilted, and then the staircase is cut off, and the gangway or whatever that is going at a weird angle. So it's all kind of jumbled, and it makes you kind of tense up.
You don't want to be there.
You don't want to be there.
Excellent. I love it. Now I'm going to give you a couple weak compositions, and I want you to talk to me. Well, I'm going to leave this with you. That's in your handout. These are all the definitions. So I'm not going to belabor them, but when you want to think about your photos, you can look at these factors or elements of art and decide what you see present in your photos. And these are the kinds of impacts they have. Line can help create movement. We talked about that with the sand dune one. Okay, you can get a design if you have variety or unity. You know, so these are. I'm not going to belabor them, but I wanted you to have them and think about them when you analyze your own photos. So here's another pairing of a strong composition on the left that's a photography composition, and a strong painting on the right by a famous artist, Albert Bierstadt, who was a regional painter of the Northeast. So tell me a little bit about what is your story on the left one? What do you think is being conveyed in that story? And then I'm going to ask you a little bit about these things. Anybody, what's the story in that one? Is there a story?
We're in the mountains. We're in the mountains and we're ready to go on an adventure with the
Yeah.
canoes.
Yes, excellent. Because what's inviting you into this?
The color,
The color?
the contrast.
Yeah. So. Second.
It's also the mountain range takes you around the curve, so there's your adventures around that curve.
Absolutely. So there's some place to go that's interesting in the background. And yeah, so you get the sense that this is about a potential adventure. And what about this painting on the right? What do you think the story is here, or what's your emotional impact?
Serene.
I don't think it's
Bold.
green. I think it's bold. I mean, the colors are really strong.
Their colors are very strong. Yes,
So I mean, it's the autumn colors, right?
yes.
But he's contrasting also the autumn colors, the bright oranges and reds, along with a dark, apparently stormy sky
Yes,
in the background.
something could
So
disturb
something-
this tranquility soon.
Yeah.
It's coming. Yes.
But the cows in the front are calm and peaceful. They're just doing their thing with water and
Yes, they're
They're-
feeding or
they're not-
drinking, yeah. So yes, you get the sense that this is very pastoral, very peaceful, very, serene, but that may not last. So there's that kind of a story going on. And
It's interesting, because if you look at it, it tells it more like it's a change. It's all about change, because you've got the changing of the colors. Then if you look, you've got the light on the right from the sunlight, and you got the big storm coming in. So there's all sorts of telling a story about change.
yeah, so that's why it's such a good painting. It's got so many interpretations. You see change, and that's also timeless. Change is a timeless subject. If you had to pick a few of these elements that stand out in each one, I think somebody said color already, right?
Mhm.
Okay, anything else really stands out? I mean, I want you to sort of recognize texture and which one?
the painting.
The painting, all this,
All that, and then in the water, more ripple.
yeah.
And
Okay.
certainly rhythm in the one with all the canoes or boats or whatever they are. There's a rhythm to that.
Absolutely. Yes, rhythm and repetition. And they're angling back towards, going into on that journey. Did you have something?
Balance also with the painting, right? So you have the reflection,
Yeah.
you have the two cows of each color, you have a few things that.
See, so how many of these they're using? Both artists are using many of these creatively to make these strong. Excellent.
And there are
What's
vines.
interesting is the cows around. It's kind of interesting because they're almost the most important element in the photo, because.
Yeah, they're the players. Yeah. If they weren't there, I don't know, maybe not. So there's more of a story now with the players in it, right? Yeah, excellent. You guys have good answers. Okay, these are weaker compositions. Okay, and when you look at this is a photograph, this is a painting. Do you get a sense for anything going on here? Do you have an emotional reaction to it? You say, throw it in the trash bin?
Throw it in the trash.
You just have no idea what you're supposed to be looking
Yeah.
at,
Yeah, okay,
especially on the left.
yes. And then, anybody else? I'm sorry.
It looked like a lot of pictures that I took a long time ago.
Was that October?
See, you're better than that. You know it's bad.
And it's very washed out to me. I mean, you've got way too much foreground and then there's not much going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lack of contrast.
yeah.
Yeah, lack
No
of color.
energy.
So you recognize, yeah, no focus. You got it.
Focus on.
What about this painting? If anything, what's,
The flow's broken. I mean, the road goes and just dives into the trees. There's not nothing to carry you back, and just carry you left and they're gone. It's
yes,
just, nothing draws you into the painting. That's me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, everybody has sort of interpretive answers. I'm happy to hear them.
The mountain feels out of proportion to the trees. You know,
Interesting.
That may be realistic, but.
Yeah.
But.
So
yeah.
there are things that don't feel right from how this person depicted space and distance and size. Okay,
No,
good.
there's some texture to it.
Yeah, it's just a triangle in the background, triangle shape. Okay, we won't.
Looks like they heard about aerial perspective, but they really didn't know how to do it.
Yeah. And everybody's heard about aerial perspective, right? Where things are more faded and more grayed out, if you will, in the distance. Okay. All right. So now those are just a couple examples to get going. So we're going to zoom into just landscapes first. And I put together this list of what I think are key strategies for coming up with good ideas in landscape compositions. Let's see. This is, from my study, I have, a master's in art education, but also from my working as an artist. So you may read other sources and find other things, but if I had to gel it down, if you're doing a landscape, what are some of the factors that you might want to consider when you're doing a landscape photograph, for instance, okay? Number one, okay, what is your subject that you've chosen? Is there a spark or an idea there? And how original and imaginative is it, okay? Like that poor photograph we saw of this, they say, like you did long time ago. There's really nothing special or unique about that at all. There's no originality into it. That's often one of the more important things to think about. Your subject, what have you chosen, okay, for that landscape photo? Second thing is there a story maybe? Or maybe it doesn't have to have a story, but it has meaning to you. There's some kind of an emotional, you look at a flower, there's no story on a flower, but man, that's a beautiful flower. Look at the curls of the petals, so any one of these is valid. Number two, does it have a focal point? I think some of you criticize that photo in the weak composition as there's no focal point. Another thing is use of leading lines and diagonals. I have all these listed here, but I'm going to go deep dive into each one of them and show you examples on each one of these. This is my list. And
What on earth is a repoussoir?
What?
What is a repoussoir?
Okay, so a repoussoir is a French term, and it means that there's something in the foreground that is usually on the far right or far left that leads the viewer into the piece. So it could be a tree standing in the foreground. It could be a person. It could be, a small shape, a fire hydrant, and then it might lead you somewhere. And I'll show you examples of that, but
So it refers to the object itself that has that kind of placeholder?
yes,
Okay.
it exactly has a certain place in the composition. It invites the viewer. So it almost puts you at the spot of that repoussoir. You're the person standing there and now come into the rest of the painting or the rest of the photo that way. And diagonals are really strong compositional elements too, because they are active. They're more dynamic in your photo. And any kind of leading lines, roadways, railroad tracks, trails in the woods, things like that help a good landscape composition. Rule of thirds is important, but it's not always the answer. We'll talk about that. Everybody knows what that is, right? The rule of thirds, you probably heard that many, many times. Simplification. Sometimes landscapes are just too busy, have too much going on. And you want to eliminate some of this extraneous stuff so that you create more unity in your piece. Rule of odds, I'll talk about that. It's better to have an odd number of the same object than an even number. Horizons line, it's better that they're not halfway in the middle, although there are exceptions to that. At least in painting, oftentimes they don't want you to have it at that halfway point. There's some beautiful triangular compositions in landscapes, and we'll see some of those. And then, as you guys talk a lot, framing and cropping is really important. And it may not always be a rectangle you're working in. Maybe you've got a square shape or a thin vertical or something. So these to me are kind of a little bit of a nutshell about when you're looking at your landscapes, can you answer some of these questions about what's going on, answering these questions because you want to engage the viewer and you want to tell a story or convey meaning. And we'll get into each one now. Have examples. Well,
Maybe.
not working. What do I do to advance it? Can somebody advance the slide? Or I can do that if you want me to be over there.
No, I'm assuming it's.
Okay, so here, the subject matter is a butte, okay, in the Southwest, okay? And there's two photographs of the kind of same butte, exactly. And there are the authors. If you had to talk about which one is a better composition, not that these are, you know, the best photos right now, but there's difference between the two. Which one is the better and why? Using any of those vocabulary words. First one, which one do you think is better? Who thinks the one on the left is the better one? Okay, anybody on the right, who thinks the right one? Okay, no. So talk about why. What is better about this?
So would that tree be the
This is
repoussoir?
repoussoir.
Okay,
It's on the left side. On this case, it invites you to be in here. Okay, it helps frame scaling almost into the composition. Yes, beautiful, because this is very close to you and it's bigger than this, even though this is monumental if you were to be right upon it.
It's also taken towards sunset. It's got better shadows.
Yes, so
better
contrast,
light.
contrast, value range. Yeah,
Color and the texture.
okay. You're seeing both. Beautiful color, great texture. The sun is beating down in this sort of rocky, barren place, and there's all these shadows showing all that beautiful texture. Okay, that's good. And I,
Got rid of a third of the sky, half the
Yeah.
sky, and part of it, you have the line of the,
horizon somewhere.
the other masons of the other.
Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah. So there could be improvements, like you say, through cropping, framing on this right one. But it doesn't, again, have the contrast of the left. So yeah, this is about a subject matter or spark change. I don't know. So here I'm showing you an example of a painting I did. This is my photo. We were in Zion, Utah. My daughter got married there, and there's an old Mormon village that's an abandoned village there, and you can go visit it. And so we were there, and I was photographing in there, and you're surrounded by these cliffs and caves, you know, of the canyons of that Zion area. And so that was my photograph. And here's my first attempt at painting it down here. So I put the fence in, I put a little wagon in, but I just didn't feel like it had, you know, enough to it. It didn't tell the story of where I was. That could be an old farmstead anywhere. But the feeling I got when I went there was more like I was surrounded by canyons. So I ended up adding mountains behind in this sort of bright green and this sort of reddish brown to kind of give you the feeling of being nestled around the mountains in a valley. I added horses to give life. Somebody's in the picture now. It's not just, you know, a building in the mountains. And I looked at a lot of the old Southwest painters for their color choices. This is what I mean about looking at art history, and look at that ochre color, you know, of the mountain, the buttes, if you will. And, you know, the sky color is more in the aqua family. So I changed my thing to be influenced by him. So I did a lot of my own editing. And what are your thoughts about, do you prefer this one or this one? I kind of told you the story, but just common reactions. This is a big painting. It's like 4 feet by. Yes, the sky and the background are important. Yes.
I think the ride just is more interesting. It's
Yeah.
more elements. As you said, you added the horses, and to me, that added a really interesting element.
Yeah,
It's more inviting also.
yeah.
So you remove the barrier. So I think it-
Yeah, this, when I had painted this, it felt like I was blocking, this is the repertoire that blocks the viewer into the painting. So I thought, it's got to go. What's that? Oh, use the microphone, sorry.
And the added mountains give you a much more sense of a sort of place where you are, and the feeling you talked about it being kind of hemmed in by mountains.
And
the
this is why they
canyons.
chose this place to live, you know, it was sort of protected. Very good comments, I appreciate it. Okay, next. So now we're on to the second of that list. This is a strong focal point through emphasis, color, value, scale, contrast, and texture. So which one has a better focal point? And can you talk about why? What are they using up here? What are the words? It's good when you can talk those words about what are they using to have a better focal point? Anybody?
You're asking the different elements, geographic? Oh, I love the one on the left.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you have the geographic shapes, it forms. the,
geometric, you mean geometric?
geometric-
The framing of the subject was what I see as most important on the one on the left. Plus the starburst from the sun that's almost missing until you look the second time.
Yeah,
I'd say the contrast too, between
This-
the light and the dark on the left.
very strong. And you have soft here, hard here. That's another contrast.
There's also a person in the left photo where the other
Yeah.
one doesn't draw you in because there isn't any
So that's
living.
the narrative part. There's a human being that's in this frame.
And the shadows is leading line.
Yeah. The leading lines, we talked about that,
So you got the shadow also.
Beautiful.
It's a leading line brings you into it.
and they're diagonal. They're helping you zoom in with this.
The one on the right is empty. I mean, the top 2/3 of it are an empty sky with no texture, no nothing. And the bottom 1/4 of it is black shadow with no texture, no nothing.
It's free to download this one if you want on the internet. There's no protection on it. So anyway, yes, absolutely. You know, I think the idea is nice, but this is not
And the
worthy
one,
of,
the one on the right, there's a line that goes across and then there's a break because the fence breaks, but it takes away the continuity of
Mhm.
the photo.
Mhm.
Although to me, I kind of like the pattern interrupted, which is also a kind of design element that I kind of like. To me, the best thing about it is pattern interrupted. That's one of the most
That's-
interesting things about it.
Yeah, because you got this pattern of the rails. And then there's even a bigger pattern of the grouping of the rails. Yeah, and that's broken away by the bike. So there's potential, but not good enough. Okay. All right. Number 3 was the use of leading lines to help bring you into the space. So these are 3 examples. I didn't remember to get the source for this one. This one's by Ansel Adams. Everybody knows him. This is another sort of famous photographer. But talk to me about which ones do you favor more for the use of leading lines, or do you like them all, and why do you like certain ones?
I think Ansel Adams was a pretty good photographer.
Yes,
And
he
he's
was.
got that S curve going.
He does. So that's a composition style, that S, yeah?
But is it good because it's Ansel Adams? Or is it a good photograph that happens to be taken by Ansel Adams? Yeah, do I like the brand? And so I bought the picture? Well, no, I mean, I like trains, so the tracks are really good
You
for
know,
me.
There's a lot of Picassos out there that really nobody likes, but they spend a lot of money to buy them. You know, there's some,
Yeah.
but just because of the
I
brand.
think we do. Birds are
Yeah.
So I actually like them all, but I like the one on the left better because it's a little, you've got the leading lines, but it's kind of disruptive, which I find interesting. You've got some kind of going off this one
Yeah.
and some straight, and then you've got the pole, the light poles in the middle. So, and you've got the atmospheric in the back.
Yes.
So I think that one to me is the most interesting.
Mhm.
I like the Ansel Adams and the left one here. It's interesting because I'm a literal person and the scale works on all of them, even the
Yes.
positioning of the camera, the way they shot it, the scale, it all works. With the one on the bottom right, it doesn't work for me. I mean, that's just me personally. It just is, but everything's where it should be in those two photos.
I'm going to say one more thing too. Yes.
I like Ansel Adams for the contrast as well. I mean, you can see the light, you can see the dark, you can see the
Absolutely.
clouds and all of that. The one on the left, Damir's, has mystery to it.
Yeah.
And there's something, I don't know, the rail comes right, you're like standing on the rail.
Yeah.
And it leads you right into the photo.
You're in this space.
Yeah.
You can be in here. This
Right.
one's, you're up on a ways away. But one other thing I want to say is these two depict the weather. And one of my teachers said, it's a real talent if you can show weather in your work. He says, I paint the weather. I don't paint a tree. I paint the weather. So both of these are showing the weather, the atmosphere.
And speaking of composition, the Damir is very central, very symmetrical and everything, which is usually kind of a boring no-no. But then the stuff going off to the left and then curving back around makes that a very bold choice, but it works.
Yeah. So clever use, clever combination. You, like you said, this centering of the railway line that may be boring, but not anymore with some of these others. Okay.
What's fascinating, oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't,
What's fascinating to me too, is we look at the mirror and then the Ansel Adams. I mean, we're, most of us are mirrorless shooters. We would have been in that scene and shot 50 photos before we walked out. They do it with one negative and a camera, and it's, there's so much more thought that goes into this type of photography than what we're doing nowadays.
and it's probably not one.
It's probably not one.
Yeah.
If Ansel Adams had a modern camera, he would have shot 1,000 pictures.
Yeah.
He just didn't have the option. I mean, for those of us who are old enough to shoot film, you had 24, 36 exposures, and that's what you took and that's what you dealt with. Now I can shoot 512 pictures and sure, whatever, I'll pick the best one,
Okay, I'll go ahead. Yeah. These are a couple of paintings that I had. They're both, sold in private. I spent half of my year up in Rhode Island, so there's a very famous, they call it the Towers along the coast. It's an old, building that was used for events, special events and meetings, and dances were held in the hall up above the archway. So I have leading lines in this. You can kind of see it's along the rocky shore. My photo, I didn't bring it in here, but my photo didn't have these diagonals of rocks, but I put them in there to give you a leading line into the piece. So I'm thinking in my composition, if I just painted maybe what I saw, it would probably be like just random rocks and random grass pieces. But I painted some leading lines in to bring you into that tower's archway. And then this is a pathway near where I live and along Berry Creek, just a photo I took. And I love the way the path zings through, the trees there, and the trees are very narrow. So I painted this. I use expressive colors. It doesn't have the natural colors. And I did not feel like it was complete. And I'm always seeing deer. I'm sure you guys are always seeing deer. So I put 2 deer in to kind of look like I startled them, because that's what happens. They look like this when they notice that you're there. So anyway, leading lines, zigzag, whatever, S-curve. Okay, next. So here's your repoussoir, a photograph on the left and a painting on the right. So, so here's the technical definition. It's a foreground element. So something right in the foreground. It's usually on the side of the frame, right or left. and it serves as kind of an anchor, a visual anchor. And then it's placed so that you want to go inside the rest of the piece. You want to go inside there. So sometimes when you put that kind of a, like if this person just photographed this distant area, it may not have been as interesting as having that foreground tree in there. So using a repertoire helps you dive into the composition. The one on the right is a famous Dutch artist, Peter Bruegel, Hunters in the Snow. And those trees, the first one forms the repertoire into that scene where they're ice skating in the valley. So do you talk about, do you have a sense that they enhance the space, these repertoires?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm asking about this, this is a question, because this stuff bothers me, but doesn't seem to bother other people. I see what you're talking about bringing in, but that tree right in the middle just seems like a stop sign.
Which one? This?
That one.
Yeah, it
That
could
just
be.
seems like everything is done to bring it in, bam, that just shuts it off. And I know, I'm asking about that. Is that,
It could. When I think of landscape, I think of foreground, middle ground, and background. And I think of this area here of trees as the midground, and this area of the water and the mountains as the background. So to me, it didn't bother me, but you know, you could edit it to be less dominant. You could shorten it if you found that it, I find that it helps to take you into that farther area a little bit, you know, that lake. But anybody else on that one? What do you think? Does that tree bother you there?
I
That
think it is a little tall, maybe.
little tall? So
but-
you could edit that, right? Take it out or shorten it.
Maybe.
Or climb a little higher. So
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. So go ahead, Pat. Okay, sense of space and depth and use of perspective, proportion. So for that factor of how do you give space and depth, which composition do you favor for a sense of space and depth and why? Maybe obvious questions, but
Once again, Ansel Adams is a pretty.
I know.
photographer.
You can see, I don't know as many photographers as I do, sculptors and painters and whatever.
But the one on the right is just so flat, even though we can see the receding rocks on the beach and then the distant outcropping of rocks. It's just so flat. There's no real sense of depth.
Mhm. Okay. This a comment about helping to give you sense of space and depth. The size of this rock and the size of the mountains, there's kind of almost the same size. So how could something be in the foreground and be that size as the same as those, you know, rocky peaks? So it's, you don't like Ansel Adams, right?
It's not that I don't like Ansel Adams. I have nothing against him. It's just somewhere in all of history, there's a photo where Ansel Adams chopped somebody's head off, had a photo out of focus or something like that. And it's not an epic photo. He just took a photo and it didn't work. You know, this guy on the right, again, there's nothing in the sky.
No,
It's just empty. The top half of the photo is useless.
so.
But I feel bad for Matt Hardy.
Yes,
We've all Matt Hardy.
I'm sorry I use Ansel Adams so much, but I wish I knew more famous photographers. I probably should study them. Go ahead, Pat. So rule of thirds, which of these two uses the rule of thirds? The one on the left. And what is the focal area on the one on the left?
The red.
Yeah. So the red, it's very obvious, even though this is a big structure, this is obvious because of why? Why is it obvious? What are they using from your sheet?
Color.
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 There's nothing as vivid as that red anywhere else. What else are they using to kind of bring that focal point out? There's more.
Yeah, the triangle there, the three red buildings.
Yeah,
Well, and rock in front of the red building is brighter than anything else in the frame.
yes. And what about this little dark shadow? The shadow, it's a very large, dark area compared to this bright, you know, rock area. So that helps create contrast.
The one on the right has a lot of the same colors.
Yeah,
There's only two colors that are predominant,
yeah.
the white and the water.
It's a tranquil scene, but not an award winner or anything, but you know, it's a beautiful place, obviously. Okay. Here's a painting I did with using the rule of thirds up in Nova Scotia, Canada. I was at this place called Peggy's Cove. Anybody ever been there? It's a old fishing village and they've preserved the antiquity of it. They don't really allow any, you know, new construction there beyond certain small homes. So I had a lot of photos. I've sold 3 paintings of work in this area, but this is an example of me making this boat, changing the shape. The composition became a vertical, changing the shape of it and making this boat really be the focal point. Whereas in the photo, it may be the focal point due to its color, but there's too much information else around there. And then I put in the diagonal created by this front dock. This other dock is another diagonal. And then I invented another diagonal of rocks to get you back up here. So I'm looking at diagonals, I'm looking at leading lines, I'm paying attention to focal point. The red of here is not as vibrant as the red on the roof. So, you know, I'm trying to, when I think about painting something, I really think about composition and how my focal point stands out. Okay. Simplification. That means getting rid of noise, excess stuff in your photos. Helps your focal point become more obvious. So anybody care to share which one may be obvious, but which one has a better level of simplification going on?
The one on the left is more simple.
Yeah,
It's black and white, helps you focus more on just the bridge and the water instead of all the other stuff in the background.
yeah. Do you think this one on the right, anybody is worth salvaging and would you keep it or is this not good enough for?
True, because, I mean, the processing approach or something. I mean, it's just, I mean, if they had processed it a little differently, maybe it could have made it a lot more interesting photo.
Yeah,
It's pretty washed out.
yeah, I think part of it is the screen here and the lighting of the screen, but yeah, it isn't really well taken and understood as a photograph or for its qualities of clarity or anything like that yet.
As photographers,
Yeah.
we're all focusing on the exposure and, you know, everything
Yeah.
like that. But compositionally, the left with that souvenir style, it's just really cluttered.
Yeah,
And there's no reason for it to be there. You could move a little bit and probably get rid of it entirely.
yes. So you could focus on that arch and maybe where this waterway is going more. Exactly. Good. So there's too much busyness here to just. Yeah. Yeah. So a lot could be worked better on this right one, you know, but like you said, maybe move to a different spot, take things out. Go ahead. All right, number 7, simplification, 6, I should say. This is the one I had on the first page. So I took a lot of photos at Allen's Boots in Austin, and I love the way they're all kind of stacked on the shelves for you to try on. So I painted a composition. I changed colors, but I painted 4 pairs and 1 spare hanging out. So I have sort of an odd number of boots in this. And I decided to work with the color scheme of this famous Swedish artist, Anders Zorn. And he only used 4 colors. He blended everything from 4 colors. So I only used 4 to get this painting. And I greatly got rid of, you know, any noise around it so that you're really focusing on the boots and their designs and their sort of the pattern they create. Anyway, so again, compositionally, I'm thinking about simplifying from photos like you would be thinking about simplifying when you edit photos. Okay. rule of odds. So which composition do you favor? Which, the one on the left, okay, it's got 3 horses instead of just 2. But talk about some other things. What about the background, the emotional reaction? Do you have any tugging thoughts about either of these in terms of, what about the background on either one of these? Is there anything that's good about them? Is there anything that's helpful to understand the place? Pat?
The background on the left is far enough back and it's got this, the aerial kind of effect to it. So it's less obtrusive, even though there's more going on than the one on the right, which is more in focus. It's got more contrast to it. So it's actually distracting
Yeah.
from, I've seen lots of photographs of 2 horses, mainly a foal and a mare, nuzzling. And so 2 is okay, but in this case, it doesn't work and the background really distracts from it even more.
Yeah, yeah. You-
Sorry, Patrick. I like the one on the right.
And why do you like it? It's okay.
Well, I get the rule of odds makes it kind of different because there's 2 horses, but then you have the background that could be your third one. Because you're looking at the 3 subjects. I'm actually being serious. Because you have your foreground, you have the 2 horses, and then you're drawn to the back with the trees. And I just like, I guess, the clarity of the horses. I think they're well done. I like the clarity of the trees in the background. And the other parts of the background being out of focus makes it more about the foreground. And I think it's nice.
So as a picture of horses, I'm with her. I like the one on the right. I think the background where the trees are is great, but where the trees aren't on the one on the right, again, it's empty and useless. There's just nothing there. There's no real, it's just fog. But as pictures of horses, better color and contrast on the right. And
more personality in the faces of the horses.
Yes, so
Yeah.
there's some good things about this people can recognize, right? Definitely.
Yep.
And, things could be improved on that too. So it's not, these aren't like award winners. They're just 2, photographs available for people to understand, but
As photographers, we'd probably say crop the one on the right, and it would be a better photo than the one on the left.
yeah.
At least that's what, a really tight crop on the one on the right, to my mind, would make it a better photo than the one on the left.
But there's more emotion, you're right, in this. If
Yeah,
you
the
want more
one on the
attention.
left is never going to really succeed because you don't have the faces of the horses. They're just down
Yeah.
eating. They're not paying attention. I would probably make some sound to get the horses to look towards the camera
Mhm.
because you're lacking the personality in the horse in both
Yeah.
frames.
So, both have things that aren't as good as they could be, This is, we talked it through, but yes, you're right. There's improvements in each for sure. All right, horizon line. Some people use the halfway point, but a lot of times people say don't use the horizontal halfway place for your horizon line. Go above it or below it. So which one's focal point and perspective is enhanced by where they put the horizon line and why? How can you talk about this?
The one on the right is much better. It's a little higher, but you've also got a lot of leading lines from the clouds and the stream below, just
Mhm.
leading you into the depth of
Yeah.
the photo. There's more contrast,
Uh-huh.
more vibrancy
So you're
and texture.
using all those words. Those are the building blocks, we talked about, and you can see them being present and it's a good piece, You begin to understand how those components build a stronger
And that
artwork.
makes me ask, where was that one? What's the
Yeah.
location?
It says on there, but okay.
and another boring sky on the left.
Yeah. Yeah.
The foreground in the one on the right looks almost like cotton candy. And that's probably caused by too long a shutter speed. I'd
Okay.
like to see a little texture in that instead of just the cotton candy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, so actually, I'm gonna have the opposite opinion. I like the long shutter speed because it creates some mystery in the water. But I guess my question is, so I'm trying to map all the things that I look in a picture to the elements of art that you are listing, but where would you put mystery? Is it space or is?
Well, it's more emotional reaction, mystery. It's
Okay.
like you're conveying something, you're conveying that it's mysterious and not understood. There's something, unusual, but I don't understand it. So it's a feeling. Yeah,
Okay.
not an element of art,
not
but
an
it's an
element.
emotional reaction that you get from, yeah.
I disagree with everyone on this one, because I really like the one on the left. Every once in a while, just to completely break the rule and say, I'm gonna put the horizon right in the middle. Although I want to edit out that thing on the left in the water, but other than that, yeah, get rid of that. I just think it's every once in a while just to utterly, like, go for it. Just completely broke the rule. The one on the right to me is someone following the rules, like 2/3, 1/3, and like that,
Could
and
be.
leading lines, and it feels by the book to me. And for this faculty to just stand there and say, I'm gonna put the horizon right in the middle. I love the gradation of the tones and everything. I love that it's absolutely flat and that there's kind of a focal point, but not one. Every once in a while, just break the rule completely and see what happens.
And art is also, you're right, it's about breaking rules. So
I thought that was just inexperience.
No, never admit that. Never admit that.
In retrospect, I was gonna say the one on the left could have been improved by getting down closer to the ground.
Oh, yeah,
and
we're gonna look at that, and that's where you take your shot from, like that, what they call the worm eye view, yeah. And these are two examples of horizon line not being in the middle. These are this is a photo in my backyard, and there are some homes back there. I think I took another photo just slightly to the right of this, but so it's morning and it's bright sunlight and fall. And I wanted to give the sense of, well, first of all, I put the horizon line much higher than halfway as in the photo. I wanted to give the sense of depth. So I decided instead of just this is a golf course, grassy area, I'm going to create some rows of garden, plantings, if you will. Where I went to school, there was tobacco farms, and you'd often see these old barns with the tobacco leaves hanging. So I just put that in there instead of a house and made the rows go back. I was thinking about Van Gogh. He does a lot of drawings too, but he did these kind of rows to kind of lead you back. So I use, and I encourage you to look at artists and painters and famous photographers to see what techniques they're using and how you can take a photo and improve it, or, if you decide to draw or paint, to change those as well. Triangular compositions. So they're very regal. They're used to kind of denote a hierarchy, a sense of pointing heavenward. A lot of times you'll see many religious paintings being done with this triangular model of the figures, sort of pointing upward. So these are examples of what you would call these triangular arrangements. And they're all good examples. Even this is not, it's got the leading lines shown over it. I mean, to demonstrate sort of heading back, but that also has a triangular aspect to it. So anyway, any comments about these? Have you ever used triangular compositions? You feel like you'd ever experiment with them? Something is like cathedral in your work that you'd mountain range or, Patrick, how about you? Have you ever?
I just have to think through
Yeah,
40,000 images in your head, so.
but it's something you don't think about sometimes, but you can maybe find a good compositional arrangement by thinking of that sort of cathedral shape and.
Yeah. What I think some of us do is we find a composition that we like. We may not put a word to it. We're not great wordsmiths necessarily. But yeah, I mean, there are mountain ranges and you've got this picture of buildings taken from low perspective up. So yeah, I'm sure I've done that. I know other people in the room have done that. So
Yeah, it's
yeah.
something to think about, different. Go ahead. This is a painting I did. So it was a foggy day up on the coast in New England, and I like the rawness of the weather. Could I paint the weather again, like the artist told me you should paint the weather. And I just decided that I wanted to bring that red canoe to be the foreground canoe instead of the one on the left side, because it's creates more of the dominance and the focal point being in the front. But this is an example of a triangular composition, whereas, the base of the triangle and then the bush forming up, and then even these shapes kind of pointing upward beyond that. So they can be very good arrangements. Thinking about triangles, if you have those components in your composition. And I liked, everybody likes Van Gogh, or most people do, but he painted this with a palette knife, which is very rough and choppy like the ocean. So I painted this with a palette knife, which means it's very scrapey and very rough looking and, more textural. So I always look to other artists to help me think about, do I just paint this normally like I would, or should I go ahead and be rough like Van Gogh? So I think about things like that. Go ahead. And then framing, cropping, and formatting. Now, these are all pictures of like demonstrations, and for their cropping and their format, their layout, which of them are better and have better emotional impact to you?
Center.
The center has a tremendous impact.
Yeah. What's the impact you have?
It's the leading lines and the depth.
Mhm.
And you're right in the action. You're right
Yeah.
in the lineup.
It's at their butt level. That's where he was taking the photo, right?
But it brings you back to the kind of what goes on in photography now. It's just one tells a story and the other creates an emotion through design, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Yeah.
And I mean, the one on the left, I mean, you can sit and look at that for 10 minutes, pick story after story. The one in the center is great. It has the leading lines, it takes you through, it follows all the rules.
But look at even how this is cropped. No heads, half bodies cropped. That's pretty strategic cropping. It's clever. I think this gentleman wants the mic.
I see how it is. I see how it is. Okay. So if you were looking at these three pictures, which one tells the most interesting story? If you were going to write a story, it's the one on the left, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure, there's great leading lines. It's focus. There's contrast on the one in the middle. All that's wonderful.
But what story?
But what's happening? Is it a group of people in formation for basic training? Is it a protest? Is it, just a bunch of kids in line? Obviously, there's a story on the one on the left. There's even a story on the one on the right, but it's just kind of a snapshot.
So
You don't know.
So think of the three things I mentioned. One is tell a story. The other is create an emotional reaction. And the other is convey meaning. So this one, definitely a storyteller one. This one is more emotional reaction, like people appreciate the design and get a sense. These people aren't in uniform, but yet they're all
Well, what do you mean by emotion?
emotion. Or did you
No,
think?
no,
it's-
no, I understand that, but, to me, one on the left evokes passion and evokes.
It does, that
there's
too.
Violence, there's things going on there, and,
So the middle one to me is kind of stressful.
It's very
Seriously,
foreboding.
Like because it's because of the perspective, you don't know what's going on,
So
you're in
that-
line waiting for something.
Yeah, so that's the emotion. There's
So-
sort of tension.
Yes.
The emotion is tension,
Yes.
okay?
So I mean, I see what you're saying on the left, but the middle one's like creates a lot of emotion.
well, that's what I mean by emotion, so you're saying one is, like, actual, one is, visceral.
Yes,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
to me, the one on
yes.
the left, you're watching that happen, but I'm not in the middle of that. I'm on the side taking that photo, and it's,
With the tank coming at you.
well, I'm off to the
I was
side.
about to
I'm not
say.
right there. Okay.
But
I mean, yes, that's obviously a story, but to me, like, you're in that,
Mhm.
you're in the center.
And of
you're in the
course, one
center,
on-
but you're in
of course-
line at the DMV waiting to get your license renewed.
That could be very stressful.
And of course, the one on the right is, don't let this happen to you with cropping. And you're stuck in a crowd and that person in front of you, you're never going to get them in
Blocking
focus.
your view.
So it evokes an emotional reaction of me of like frustration because you want to knock his hat off or something.
So I'm glad to see there's so much talking about this. I think it's good. It's healthy. You're analyzing, you're reacting. That's again, the beauty of art, is it's different. From
One
some
right
guys.
has a color, and it looks like chaos to me.
Mhm,
And the other two are black and white, which simplifies the stories.
mhm.
But there's something to be said about chaos too, right?
Yeah, I don't
And-
know what country this is. I don't know what flag that is. but- Okay,
And for me, I've been photographing demonstrations lately and it's really getting to me because I feel the frustration of standing right
of
there.
that person with the
Yeah,
green hat, yeah.
yeah.
All right, Pat, go ahead. All right, so we just went through these factors and not everyone is at play in every landscape photograph, but there's something to think about. As you take photos of landscapes and want to think about, am I using any of these compositional strategies that are going to make it a stronger photo? Does it tell a story? Does it convey meaning or does it get an emotional response or more than one of these? Okay, and does it keep the viewer looking for a long time? There's enough going on that you want to look at it and discover and learn more. Okay,
Can I jump in and
Yeah.
say what you're inspiring me to do? I love that you included a masterpiece that inspired some of your own work.
yeah,
And that inspires me to suggest to the club that maybe one theme would be looking at the work of a master and creating a photograph that
and they're liking it.
they like it. They like me. They really like me.
Looking for new ideas. Very good.
The idea.
Yeah.
You have to identify the master for us for the competition.
No, your own. You get to pick.
You have to go back 2 years, more than 2 years. So that's about
So we're going to shift gears away from landscapes to what I think of as single subject, florals, man-made objects or natural objects. And I've got a list of the factors that I think about. Again, it's not the end all and be all, but go ahead, Pat. And the ones that are not highlighted are the same as composition for landscape. So what's your subject matter? Okay, rule of thirds, strong focal point simplification, rule of odds. Those are all still important in a single subject. But the things that are new for single subject are things like when you frame and crop, maybe you're really zooming in on something in this animal's head or flower or whatever. There's different points of view that become more important to think about. The bird's eye view on things, eye level, worms, you know what the worm's view is, right? You're on the ground looking up. Maybe you take a frontal of something, maybe you take a side view, back view. There's more to think about those. What's your direction that you're looking at something? And then a lot of times there's not a lot of space or depth. So how do you show some depth in that shallow space? Okay. You still have to use things like contrast. There may be a little bit of perspective going on, but it is important to show depth, not flatness, unless, we'll talk about that. There are abstract photos as well. Pattern and break to the pattern, where you photograph a group of things that are a family of objects and then something is different. Something called an all-over composition. And those tend to be quite abstract photos. They tend to be about things like textures and patterns. And I'll show you some examples of those. And then lastly is that clarity and creativity of expression is more. Can you get to that with this single subject? And your point about that you like the horses' heads and expression, that's really important here, because can you get some expression in this somehow? Or are you getting an emotional response? Okay. All right, go ahead. So we're going to go into each one of these. So these are two examples of strong compositions, a photo on the left and a painting by Georgia O'Keeffe on the right. And talk to me, using any of these words about elements, what stands out in each of these and what principles are caused by it. Do you get, a sense of movement, whatever. So talk to me about the photograph. What's really being used there?
On the left, we're back to complementary colors with the blue and the orange,
Yes,
which
color.
is really making it pop like that.
Yeah,
There's texture.
texture, beautiful, yeah. Form and shape, all these, every which way these curls are going, yes. I didn't hear you. What? Movement, yes. So you can see this piece is using these and it comes right out when you see it. And that means it's stronger, compositionally stronger. And people know Georgia O'Keeffe, Southwestern painter. So her canvases are huge, right? Talk about scale. This is an example of scale. This is a blown up photo of a flower that's this big. And that scale change is also important in these, like zooming in and enlarging some of these single subject. The repetition of her petals, this is almost like somewhat of a cathedral thing because things sort of rise up. But where she chose to place the flowers is unusual. I mean, this painting is about 4 feet tall, probably maybe two feet wide. So big purple flowers right in front of you like that. So they have a lot of drama to them. Okay. And these are examples of weaker compositions, a photo on the left and a painting on the right. So talk to me about, does anything engage you on either of these? And if not, what could be improved?
Speak up, car boys. The boys here love taking pictures of cars.
Mhm. What do you think of the car photo?
I think it's boring.
boring. Okay.
I'd like to know how to improve the one on the left because I think I've got a lot of photos like that. The one on the right is certainly more engaging. It's got variety of color and the background is soft and it's got a star that kind of draws you in, I think, and the red on it kind of draws you in. There's lines, there's just more interest in that, in the
Mhm.
right photo. So tell me how to make the left one better.
Anybody, how would you make the left one better, or is there who's two photographs? Yes.
The one on the left is, the big thing it has going for it is the symmetry of the headlights. And once you pass that, it doesn't have much to drive you.
Yeah.
Just
The
move
one on
over,
the
we can
right
get an angle, yeah.
Is a nicely placed car where you're looking at essentially three wheels. One's covered up by grass, but you're lacking the saturation and the contrast that it takes to make that car pop and make the sky recede a little bit.
Yeah.
The sky is interesting, but it doesn't need to be as bright as it is in this image.
Mhm. So it's got potential, but you're right. All those edits could be a
So-
strengthening to the piece. Yes.
On the left, the two headlights really make me think of
Cars, the Disney movie. And if you could put eyeballs and a mouth and a small. Oh, did you say that? Oh,
That's
yeah,
cute.
Dennis puts eyeballs in his photographs of creatures, yes.
Oh, there's another gentleman here on the,
Okay, on the left, one, it's not level. Two, you have cut off the hood ornament or anything that shows the branding of the car, which might for Leslie add an element of mystery for what kind of car it is. The headlight on the left is a little washed out, so you can't see the texture in it.
Oh,
So you
a lot of
could,
good
there's a lot
comments.
of things you could do to kind of bring that up a little bit. You could get the texture on the grill / radiator.
yeah,
A clarity slider and just kind of, you know, bump that up about 30 notches.
And
Seems like-
in critiques of photos, we often tell the creator of the photo to like take 2 steps to the left and angle it or something like that. Definitely. Something has to be really interesting to make a successful photo just straight on symmetrical.
mm-hmm,
It can be done, but it's not done here.
mm-hmm, that's a
That
good
black
point.
mass,
Yeah.
that's like 2/3 of the photo.
So here we go with cars again, examples of stronger compositions, okay? Talking about cropping and formatting and talking about point of view here. The left one is a painting by Stieglitz. The right one, sorry, a photo by Stieglitz. The right one is a painting by Richard Estes, who's an American photorealist painter. So what makes these good from a compositional standpoint in terms of their point of view, their cropping? What makes it worth studying and looking at and staying with it as a photo and then as a painting? Anybody?
So they're both zoomed in,
Okay,
using the words. The one on the left is from a perspective that's not at eye level. It's a little below eye level. And the one on the right, you're looking down at it, but you're pretty close to it. So it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel off. It feels
Mhm.
good. Yeah, there's a lot of contrast.
I thought they both had interesting angles. The one on the right, it's a side view, which is kind of an unusual way
yeah,
to take it. And then this one, I'm not crazy truthfully about the one on the left, but you are taking it from the back, which is different, right? And I don't know, it's kind of cut off. So I'm not as enamored of that one.
mhm,
Both of these are a back view and a side view
yeah,
at an unusual eye point levels, which is.
yeah, but not your eye level, yes.
Not eye.
The painting on the right is using triangles, a tremendous number of them throughout it. You've got the hood, yeah. I'm also looking at what's on the screen in front of me, and it's much higher in contrast than what I can see from here, but the bumper, the black with the silver with the chrome that's a big triangle. You've got the indicator light orange with its the orange itself is got a triangle in it. And then the housing is a triangle in the reverse angle. Then you've got circles, lines. So it's got a tremendous number of geometric things going on with it,
Yeah,
along with the color contrasts.
so beautiful repetition of those shapes, whether they're the triangles. I think of this as a bullet. I get the sense of speed because these are shaped to go forward. They're not that hierarchical triangle, but they're this way with the triangle. And as Pat said, there's repetition, there's use of lines, repetition of the curves, repetition of the shapes. There's a lot of mastery in this painting. Okay. Strong focal point due to emphasis, color, value, contrast, scale, texture. So one on the left is a photo, the one on the right is a pastel painting. So first of all, obvious focal points in both, could you say? All right. And what is it? What are they using? Like, be specific to give you that focal point. What is it about that focal point that's making it stand out? What are they using? Go ahead.
Focus.
Focus.
Depth of
On the
field.
one on the left,
Depth
Okay,
of field.
Depth of field,
see, you know your language better than me,
Yeah.
but yes, this is out of focus.
which would be contrast, I guess, more than anything in this
Contrast,
photograph. You have the contrast in the details. So-
color.
Definitely.
Maybe the last.
Well, the lack of really structure.
I think
Is
maybe.
is it good that they have that negative space?
Yes.
But in the
Rule of
original,
thirds, that's a rule of thirds, right?
in the original, the left-hand side is relatively dark, and then you've got the right-hand side being light. So you've got this contrast of sides and of color or shading in the background going on. So the use of negative space, it's a little off for most of us who like symmetric things, but yeah.
Oh,
He
repertoire.
wants a repertoire right here, you know?
Yes, yeah.
So on the one on the right, if it was a photo, I wouldn't appreciate having the plastic bag. But the fact that it's a painting, I think it looks really cool.
Yeah, technically, it's challenging to do what she.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think it looks really cool in the photo, being a painting.
Most painters don't paint plastic. She made plastic. She was sort of that period of pop art and consumerism, 1970s. She was, sort of getting into how, products are ready-made now and things are packaged in plastic, so, and this is a big painting. It's way bigger than the size. of-
Also, in order to emphasize the foreground orange, tangerine, whatever it is, it's one of these things is not like the other. It's halfway peeled.
Yeah. So change of sort of matter of the subject, change of state of the subject. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. All right, depth in a shallow space using contrast, perspective, and proportion. So both of these are photos. And which one makes more of an interesting composition in a shallow space? And why? What is it? No, you're shaking your head.
I don't know why, but the left one has my interest more than the one on the right. I think because you're closer in, you don't have anything else to look at basically, except for that front of the house.
Mhm.
And a more interesting sky, so but.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
And people know what a shotgun house is, right? In New Orleans, there's a lot of them, yeah.
but I think one of the things that's fascinating about the one on the left is that it's a very narrow house, but you see enough to the left of that house and to the right to kind of imagine that it's actually very
Yes.
deep and narrow.
Yes,
So somehow, even though it's fully frontal, you kind of have this
yes.
this sense of depth.
You bring up such a good point about cropping and this little amount, there's still these perspective diagonals they created by the roof lines of the houses, to give you the sense that it's going back, but just enough information to not, change your focus away from this shotgun house. Yes.
And then you've got the shadows across the lower portion of the porch, across the door and the window, and they match along with the roof line.
Yes, triangles, right?
So you've got,
Some nice
and then
triangles.
you've got the three verticals in the front.
The one on the right doesn't look complete. I want to see the whole thing. I want to see more of it
Yeah,
in order, and
Good
less of the
props,
sky,
maybe.
but it's just, it needs more.
The one on the left too feels more like a painting to me.
It is very painterly. It's, the time of day, the moodiness of the sky, the shadow depth, even the colors are, they're well chosen, or they're, he probably could have photographed other shotgun houses, but this sort of gives the feeling of poverty and desolation by the choice of these dim colors, you know, if you will. Okay. All right, these are about cropping, formatting, rule of odds, and breaking the pattern. So the two on the left are photos, and the one on the right is a painting by Janet Fish of Windex bottles. And again, that's a very large painting, so they're painted way larger than life. So what techniques of these are working in each of these? Who wants to talk about any one of them? Take the left one with the Cokes. What's going on in the left one about any of those things?
Interrupted pattern for sure.
Yeah,
And the rule of odds, because the three similar and one
Yeah.
strange one. And it's cropping and formatting too, because she's cutting off the top, whatever, they are cutting off the top,
yeah,
but it feels like a very specific choice rather than, sometimes what some of us do, and we weren't paying attention, but this feels intentional.
Yeah.
And same for the middle one. It feels like a very deliberate choice to cut their heads off, Yeah.
okay. Anything else on any of these?
The choice of just having a little bit of rose in the petals is
Mhm.
interesting because the rest of it's kind of monotone,
Mhm.
black and white. So that's interesting. Selective
And
color.
instead of this being a wedding photo, this is more of a work of art now. I view it that way, more of a work of art that could be put in a competition and not just in somebody's wedding album.
The Windex ones just don't grab my attention. Who wants work?
They're very, this is extreme cropping, they're just like fit in that frame. So, that's like the pop art era. That's a lot of.
But
what they
another
paint.
nice technical trick with the plastic in the painting, because it is a painting, not a photo, like
Mhm.
with the plastic bag before.
Yeah,
Some art to this one in the middle. What is that?
This
How much
one?
do you see that makes that?
in the middle. I see that, it's more artistic. It's got sort of the rule of odds going on. It's got great contrast, both in mostly black and white to a little bit of color. It creates the cropping creates more of a story about what's happening with this little girl and why is she sort of interrupting this space, but it's kind of a joyful change to that. So whoever captured this moment makes me think it was quite special to have. It's not a posed thing. And I just find that I get more sort of an emotional reaction to it of, this was, a scene interrupted by this little girl, and what a great little, thing she was to break away from all the black and white. I don't know what other emotion I can talk about there, but
It's that Ansel Adams photo I mentioned earlier where the heads are chopped off and it's great because it's Ansel Adams.
I don't know. What do you think, Pat? Because you do a lot of portrait photography. What do you think about the one in the middle? What would
The
you
one in
say?
the middle, the one in the middle, it is, yeah, as you said, it's telling the story of the little girl. But is the little girl the flower girl, and these are the petals that she has or were going to be given, what's the story is the question there. The fact that the heads are taken off or cropped off, it also makes it almost timeless.
Mhm.
You're not looking at someone's makeup and
Yeah.
and how they're put together. So yeah, kind of it reminds me of the 70s and 80s kind of photographs.
Mhm.
It also kind of puts you in perspective of the little girl.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and where this was, you're right, this is somebody's crouched down low taking this. Yeah, maybe on the ground. Okay, I'm sorry, but and these are examples of all over compositions, which means that it's more about movement and pattern created. The one on the left is a photo. It's called Worn Contours. It won a Natural Landscape Award, Photography Award, and the one on the right is Jackson Pollock. Giant composition, probably like 12 feet by 8 feet. First, sort of the first person to do this style of modern art. So what of these things, what do all over compositions do? Why would you even photograph this, and why do you find it interesting to look at either of these, and why? Anybody?
The color's great, the movement's great on both of them. I actually like the photograph better than
Mhm.
Jackson.
Mhm.
It's, and we know what that is.
Well, I probably should have,
Sorry.
it's an aerial view, but I'm not sure what formation it is.
What was it? I'm sorry.
It's an aerial view,
Aerial
but I'm
view.
not, it's some
Okay.
sort of land formation with maybe chemicals or something. I don't know, swirling in amongst the, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
No,
know. I
do
should have
that.
paid more attention to the source of,
So the color and the movement, obviously, in that one.
yeah.
Both of them.
So there's something going on with color and creating movement and the repetition of the curves, but they're very organic. They're not, repeated in the same exact, copycat kind of pattern. So people may or may not like this style of all over composition, but it's also a valid way of composing it works with things like textures and sort of zooming in on natural, details of, plants maybe, or ground and water, things like that. Okay. And this is my last slide about clarity and creativity of expression. So I think Pat mentioned that a lot of times you see a mother deer and a fawn as being the subject of a photograph. And, and they're charming, but is that really a award-winning photo? And then the one on the right is, a single deer looking straight at you. So which of these do you feel there's a stronger and more clear, and it's more creative way of showing expression?
I don't know if it's creative, but definitely the more interesting one is the one on the right, because it's very confrontational. You
Mhm.
can see his face, you can kind of read his expression and everything.
Mhm.
And on the left, I don't see it feel it's very interesting to see the fawn's butt.
So, I think animals have emotions. A lot of times, you mentioned you like seeing the horses' faces, this is really a face of expression, it's a fierce look. It's I'm ready to confront you look, So it's another thing to be able to, if you're depicting an animal or whatnot, can you get that sort of clarity of their expression? Because that creates a stronger piece, not just a nice picture of a dog or whatever. Okay, I think I'm at the end. One more. Oh, no. I handed this out. These are just some diagrams of, these types of compositions, a lot of which we saw today. And then go to the next one, Pat. It's in your handout. So I brought along a painting. This is Notre Dame in Paris. And I was so moved when the tower burned because I had visited there several times. My daughter was studying, she was in graduate school in Paris, so she had taken a lot of pictures before the tower burned. So I used her photograph to create this. And a lot of people paint the front of Notre Dame, but I chose to paint the side where the tower ends up being in this sweetheart area of, the golden section or mean. And I brought the painting here. I used a lot of expressive colors. There's really no browns in this. It's all blues and purples and aquas and rose. And I wanted the purple to be more of the regalness of this space that I saw, when I was there. And so I use a lot of color expression, to kind of convey my attachment to that place. And then this is a recap, the same thing, just show you again that we just went over that. And then that's the end, Pat. One more.
I guess one quick comment on the previous slide,
Yeah.
no, actually, yeah, the recap, the depth I think could also be listed in the landscape, right? Because I do think that when we try to compose landscapes, we always look for ways with the foreground, middle ground, background to create a sense of depth as well.
Yes, you're right. I think that,
But
it's
it-
not the shallow space, but it's
Yeah.
depth in a grander scale.
Mm.
Yes, definitely. Okay. That's it for me. Just remember those two goals, okay? Convey some meaning or intent and get their attention. Use those elements and principles of design that I handed out to kind of analyze your photos. What are those shapes? What are the lines going on? And look at those factors I gave you. And then maybe think about art history to inspire what you do. Maybe it's going to be your subject matter, or maybe it's going to be your color choices on something. So anyway, that's it. Thank you, everybody. And I don't know if I have questions. It's been a long time. I didn't think I would take this long, sorry.
That's all right. No, that's wonderful. I mean, I think this is probably one of the more educational presentations we've had in a long time. Yeah. Thank you very, very much for making time to come out and talk to us and educate us.
Got that, question, hard to find. Even within photographers, some people consider themselves artists, some people don't consider themselves artists. And so it's I struggle with not considering myself an artist. But I look at how I try and create and capture emotion and scenes, and I'm a style photographer, a street photographer. And I have a difficult time. That's when I asked you that. It wasn't a confrontational question. I don't understand. I put a photo in a show here, and I got second place for fine art, and I kept looking at it going, what? I didn't understand.
So you are an artist and you don't realize it.
Well, no, that was
you're-
just one photo.
No, but you say you're looking for emotion, which is good. And, maybe some of these tools will help you analyze
Oh,
the photos you take, and
No question.
strengthen what you choose.
Enjoy it very much.
Okay.
Okay, so we have probably another 20 minutes, here in the room, if you wish to, mingle and talk as we normally do. Next month, May. Okay, so I don't have anybody, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a presentation on making or assembling panoramas. Okay, so be ready for at least 10 or 15 minutes worth of discussion, and we'll be done at that. We'll go meet at the bar. So
We talked about at one point, I think earlier, about maybe starting to do some little demonstrations, Lightroom or Photoshop. Was that something that is possible at some point?
I'll think about how I might be able to do that. Yeah. Well, I'll think about it.
Like tips.
Yeah.
Here's tonight's tip.
One thing we've discussed a little bit is to have birds of a feather. And if we have people that want to do Lightroom study or Photoshop study, have a Zoom meeting to do that. So that way we can share screens and talk about the tools. You don't have anything to say there?
I do.
Verlin.
So we have the Pflugerville Library Show, and that date is rapidly approaching. We had to extend the deadline a little bit. So be sure and enter your photos into that competition if you would like to display photos at the Pflugerville Library, and we'll be making decisions on those shortly. There's no theme, just like it was before, just like the Jester Courthouse more recently, relatively family friendly. They get to say, no, we're not going to put your picture up because it is not family friendly. But we've done this show before, same idea. Pictures that belong in a library. And there's plenty of room.
Did anybody follow the instructions and submit and it worked for you, right? No.
Yeah, Ed had 12 steps and I included them in the most recent message. It's a gallery, so it's a little different than submitting to your typical competition. But I think it's great that you persevere, you can do it. And you have to be a registered member, of course. Yeah, we'd like to see at least one picture from everybody, please. And the O. Henry Punoff is on May 10th. And if you'd like to come and be a photographer for the event, I would love to have your help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That wraps it up. See you in a couple of weeks.